record right now. So today, Dr. Bryson and myself are going to talk about policies and procedures. But before we do that, I'll give both of us a chance to introduce ourselves. And I will say that this will be very informal and an opportunity for you all to ask questions. We do have some initial policies that we wanted to talk about to kind of get your wheels thinking and turning and asking questions on some pretty important ones. But I'm hoping that you guys have brought questions forward so that we can answer those for you. So what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about late work, because that seems to be a question I get all of the time. What's the policy? What do I do? Late work, discussion posts. We're going to talk about announcements. We're going to talk about attendance. And this is more of my shameless plug and reminder on recording attendance on a certain day. We kind of get the day confused. We're going to talk about discussion expectations, plagiarism, and the policy and the what do I do there. We are going to talk about a little bit about Safe Assign, which does go back to the whole plagiarism discussion. And then we're going to open it up to you all. So when we address each policy, we'll give you guys a chance to ask questions about each of those policies, and then we'll open it up to you all. You'll have our ear until 7, and hopefully we can answer questions that you guys might have. But first, I'll introduce myself. I'm Andrea Cook, and I know all of you guys, which is wonderful. I'm the assistant dean. I'm here in Overland Park, Kansas, great state of Kansas. And our weather's actually pretty nice these days, so I appreciate that. What you guys might not know, since you guys know me pretty well, I have 2 kids. I have a 12-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son. And I'll just give you a little funny story. So my kids go to school. There's no buses. So I either have to leave work at 3 and go pick them up and drop them off, or they have to go to after school care. Well, my 12-year-old daughter just, that's just terrible. And so she texted me today and asked me if I was going to come pick her up. And I said no. And she said, well, I'll stay here until 5 and that's it. And I said, well, how are you going to get home? And she goes, I will walk. I have my resources. So these are the things that I get to deal with on a daily basis. So I much prefer coming to the office and enjoying time with you all. So that's a little bit about me and who I am. Dr. Bryson, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Dr. Karen Bryson. I know a number of you. I'm a full-time faculty member with Ottawa Online. I've been with Ottawa now for 16 years. Hard to believe it's gone by so quickly. I do teach the phase 1 training. I'm also a phase 2 mentor, and I'm a mentor for faculty members in the liberal arts. So I know a number of you through phase 1 or phase 2, or I'm your mentor, your ongoing peer mentor. So I predominantly teach our writing and critical thinking and global issues in the liberal arts, although I am a professor of psychology and human services. I don't get to teach those as much as I would like, but I enjoy teaching our writing and critical thinking and global issues very much. One other thing about me right now, I'm also the lead faculty for psychology for online. So those of you who have questions or concerns about psychology for now can direct those to me. I do not have children. The only child that my husband and I have is a 4-legged one who has fur, and it is a bloodhound. So I have no funny stories about my kids to share.
Awesome.
Okay, Andrea.
Well, thank you, Karen. And Karen and I work really closely together, work on training needs. And so we talked about this, and she actually did this training, 2 years ago, maybe?
I don't know. especially now with COVID, the years are blending together. Yeah, it could have been 2 years, probably a year and a half to 2 years at least. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it went well. And so we're hoping maybe to do this once a year, because we really want this to be an opportunity for you guys to bring forward your questions. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to share my screen really quickly because we're going to talk a little bit about late work, but I did want to pull up what was in the syllabus, which you guys have all seen or should have seen. Can you guys see my screen, my second screen? Okay. So this is just the standards course policies and resources. It should be, you have 3 parts to your syllabus in your course. This is one of them. So lots of things that are, you know, addressed in this great document. I hope you guys all are very familiar with it. But the one thing that we're going to talk about is late work. So late policy, submission policy. I do want to state that you guys as the instructors have the academic freedom to really make the determination on accepting late policies. Per the syllabus, with instructor approval, with that academic freedom, assignments may be accepted for up to 1 week after the due date, but a minimum automatic deduction of 10% of the points will be assessed. The instructor also has the option of increasing this deduction up to a maximum of 20%. Extenuating circumstances may be determined on rare occasions, and an extension allowed without a deduction. But again, it is at your discretion as the instructor. You guys know your students, you know the situations better than any of us, so we really rely on you guys to make that determination. But you do have the syllabus to fall back on to support you when you if you do give that 10% or that 20% deduction. The other important part of this talks about the discussion board postings, that they will not be accepted for credit when posted after the close of the discussion week. Students are discussing within that week. That's a big part of their grade and interacting. So you can't go back and post follow up to peers, because that's if we were in a classroom, it's all about that discussion going back and forth. So you can't go back into a classroom that nobody's in there and talk to the wall. That just isn't how that works. So there are no exceptions to this rule. However, again, solely at your instructor, you may allow a student to submit an alternative assignment to make up for the points under extenuating circumstances. I haven't seen this happen very often, but I have seen it happen on occasion, especially with everything that's happened with COVID. So I just want to, the only thing I want to say before I turn it over to you with questions on this is I really encourage you guys to be very transparent with what your expectations are for students in late work. Maybe that first week in your course announcements, post, if you're going to follow this syllabus, that's great. Post that to the students and let them know this is what you expect. This is what you will hold fast to, unless, of course, a student does have an extenuating circumstance, which we're all aware of. So I'm going to stop there and turn it over to see what questions you guys have regarding late work.
Andrea, for people who are under the reasonable accommodation aspect, how does that impact that?
That's a great question. And you're talking about like an ADA?
Yes.
Okay, that's a good question. I don't try to touch ADA, which Dr. Moore was on here, but you will hear about that. The student has to submit paperwork and get approval, and the ADA coordinator will reach out to you as the instructor with those accommodations and lay those out specifically what is expected. If that accommodation says the student gets an extra week on an assignment, then that accommodation does not say the student gets an extra 2 weeks on the accommodation. So I would go very specifically with what that accommodation says, which you will receive directly from the ADA coordinator.
I actually did get that from her, and she indicated, she talked a lot about the, it was very extensive, but I remember that she talked a lot about the NC grade after the course is over. So that's pretty much what I got out of it, that they could extend their time to submit their work. And then later on, after the term is over, I'd have to go back and grade it whenever that was submitted.
With those ADA accommodations, if that was what was allotted, yes, I would work in, within that framework, because those are pretty important to work within those frameworks.
Okay.
But if you ever have questions, call that ADA coordinator. Usually it's Dr. Moore, unless you're at the Surprise campus or the Phoenix campus.
Yes.
But call them directly and have that conversation with them, please, because
Okay.
I'd rather you do that than be, just not sure what your position is as the instructor. And so they'll inform you and be really helpful with that.
Okay. Thank you.
What other questions related to late work? I do just want to say again, you're the instructor. You have that academic freedom to make those determinations when extenuating circumstances are allowed. But just be upfront with students at the beginning of the term and post your expectations and just be very transparent with those. So I'm going to turn it over to
Sorry, Andrea, you muted yourself really fast.
I got really excited. I'm turning it
You're
over.
like, I'm gone. I'm out of here.
All right, Karen, if you want to talk about announcements.
Yes, thank you. I'd be happy to. You were just like so fast. So announcements. We ask that instructors post at least one announcement per week. That's the minimum. And announcements, I find, are best made on Monday, if you can, Monday morning. That seems to me the time that they work the best in the schedule, considering that the week ends Sunday at midnight. It gives them a new, fresh perspective on the week. Now, the announcement can give a wrap up of the previous week and also the expectations for that week that the students are going into. So it can be twofold. You can do both of those things. I feel like the announcements set the tone for the class, and really you're showing your personality while still being professional, but also really being supportive, giving a little bit about yourself, who you are as an instructor, setting the expectations for the class. All of those things can be done in the announcement. Since instructors don't have a lot of room for adding new content to a class, because we're giving classes that are already created, the announcements is one of the places where you can take advantage of being able to perhaps give some value added, giving a link to an article that maybe you want to bring to their attention that's related to the course material that week. It's also a great place. We're encouraging faculty members now to do video announcements. So this is a great place to incorporate those into your classroom environment. But I really feel like it's setting the stage for the class, setting your expectations and setting the tone for the class when you're doing your opening announcement, and then also reiterating that on a weekly basis, setting the tone and setting the guidelines and the expectations for each of those weeks, alerting students to things that are coming up that are important that week. Research papers are due this week, bold, underline, please get them in, those types of things, important things that are coming up. This is also a great place that we encourage you very strongly to post important information about perhaps your lack of being able to speak to them. I found myself in the hospital. I may be out of touch for the next 2 days. Try it if you can, if you're able to set that as an announcement, let them know. I had a death in the family. I had to go out of town for a couple of days. I will be back. So they're not panicking if, they try to reach you and you're not reachable. So these are great places to post that type of thing as well. I'm really wanting to encourage you again about the videos. We're trying to incorporate that as much as we can. I'm taking myself, since I'm so poor at it, I'm taking a class on, it's called Shine Online, being able to enhance your skills on video. So once I'm done with that class, it's a 6-month-long class that Ottawa is very wonderful in paying for me to take. I'm going to be doing trainings for all of you on being able to enhance our presence on video. So I'm really excited to be bringing that to you as soon as my class is done. and training all of you in that area. And perhaps you have some anxiety and feel like you could use some skills in really enhancing your presence by video. So I'll be doing a training on that sometime within the next few months once my training is done. So what questions do you have about announcements?
Hi, Karen. It's Alan.
Hi, Alan.
Not really a question, but more of a comment. Well, two comments. I'd like to reiterate the value of doing the video announcements, and they don't even have to be perfect. You know, you can use. There's a lot of programs out there, so I do encourage that as well. But one thing to mention, and I wouldn't say it's a requirement, but encourage faculty not to do. Try not to cut and paste what's in the weekly materials and then just post that in the announcements, because it shows I don't want to use the word laziness, but it doesn't show a lot of effort, and students can really see that, oh, that's from the class. And the announcements can be a place where you can really bring in, it's hard, maybe not your full personality, but put your own twist on it, add your own flavor to it. But the cutting and pasting from what's already in the course and putting it as your main weekly announcement, it's a little bland. It's not that inviting. So that's just my own bias on that. But I would just encourage trying to add your own flavor and do not just cut and paste the full weekly materials, whatever the recap for the week, and post it for the announcement. That would just be my 2 cents recommendation.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. Those are great tips. Yeah, you don't want to reiterate what's in the syllabus or what's in the weekly materials. Unless it's something that's really important, you want to make sure you bring it to students' attention. But yeah, for the most part, you want it to be fresh, enhancing, adding value to the class. And I like to add little jokes and memes because that's my personality and the students like it. I get a lot of positive comments about my little jokes and memes. So, other questions? Comments? Okay, next topic.
All right, we're going to talk about attendance. So I'm going to share my screen again. I'm also going to post this link into the chat because I think it would be great for you guys to have it. Give me 1 second. It's in the catalog, but there you go. So attendance is very important to take, and I probably won't do it justice from the financial implications for financial aid to talk about that, but it has held up students' financial aid when attendance is not posted. So from an online course standpoint, I'll talk a little bit about online courses as well as ground courses, because I think we've got a mix on here. But attendance should be posted once a week, regardless of if you're teaching online or if you're teaching a face-to-face course. But what constitutes as attendance might look a little bit different if you were in the face-to-face classroom versus if you were teaching online. So as far as what constitutes attendance, let's talk a little bit about that. Physically attending a class would be attendance. Submitting an academic assignment, attendance. Taking an exam or an interactive tutorial. A lot of us use, McGraw-Hill or Pearson, the lab components, those would be attendance. Attending a study group that's assigned by the institution, we don't necessarily have that. Participating in an online discussion, that would be attendance. And here's one that's a little bit difficult to discern, but it is in here. Initiating contact with a faculty member to ask a question about the academic subject studied in the course. So those are a little bit harder to discern on with attendance, but that is in here. So I kind of leave that up to your academic freedom. In the online, though, the easiest ones are obviously if they participated in discussion or submitted an assignment. The big thing is to consider what week that participation is. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So if we are in week 2 and the student's a little late, still submitted those assignments in week 1, you would count, but they were gone from week 1, you would count them absent in week 1 and present in week 2, because it was in week 2 that they were participating. So regardless of what week they submitted the assignment for, you're really looking at what week they are participating in. So that's kind of an important thing that I see a lot. The other important reminder is when posting attendance from an online standpoint, you want to post attendance on the Sunday for that previous week. So that's a little confusing. A lot of people, when you go into post attendance, will post it on that Monday because you're posting attendance on Monday, but you need to set the date to that Sunday. Now, if you're teaching a ground class, you post attendance for the date that your class is held. So if it's Tuesday, even if you held the class Wednesday for whatever reason, if it says your class is supposed to be on Tuesdays, those are the dates you should be recording that attendance for. Okay. I know we might have some questions here, so I'm going to stop talking and see what questions you guys have regarding attendance. It's very, very, very important that we post attendance every week for online on that Sunday. So the system doesn't pick up if you post it on Monday. So what questions do we have? You guys must all post attendance. I like it.
So what if we miss posting it on Sunday? If it doesn't pick it up on Monday, do we need to call somebody?
No, actually, Blossom, that's a great question. When you go in, let's say even if you go in to record attendance on Tuesday, you can set that date to Sunday or whatever date your class is held. If you're teaching a ground class, you can just set that date. You can pick the date you want it to show the attendance for. Does that make sense?
Oh.
So
Yes,
technically, if you wanted to post it on Sunday, technically you would have to stay up past midnight because students could be in attendance until midnight on Sunday when the weekend. So no one expects you to stay up until 1 a.m. on Monday, right? So you're going to be probably doing it Monday morning, but you're backdating it to that previous Sunday when you submit it. So
got it. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear then, that it's the day that you're talking about that we posted on, not necessarily the day that we're actually posting.
Correct. And that's why it's so confusing, because you have to set the system to that Sunday. It's gonna automatically put you in the current date that you're in there for.
Right.
So you have to pick the date you wanted to post on. And for online, we always want it to be that Sunday of that previous week. Except for week 8, because week 8 we end on Saturday. So attendance should be posted on that Saturday. So it's a little confusing there, but that is important to remember. I have a couple questions in the chat, or Kelly asked a question. When we put in attendance, that is all we need to do, right? I mean, we're not having to track the records and go further with their advisors. That's correct, Kelly. Outside of OU Connect, right? So use OU Connect if your students are missing. You've put that they've, been gone for the last 2 weeks. Go ahead and use OU Connect to alert their advisors. But advisors are tracking that. Yes, that is correct. Sometimes if you have a student that hasn't participated for 3 weeks, you might get an email from the registrar that says, hey, Karen, I noticed that Deborah hasn't participated for 3 weeks. Is that correct that we will drop? That's not questioning you in any way. It's just affirming that is correct, because when we drop the student, it's, we want to make sure that those records are correct. And it's happened where somebody's accidentally put absent when they meant to put present. So it's not questioning you saying you shouldn't be marking the student absent. It's just merely saying, hey, just double check, affirm, correct. So what other questions regarding attendance?
I have a question. Okay, so let's say the term, and I'm really bad with dates. So let's say the term at early summer is starting on May 3rd, right?
Correct.
So on Monday the 10th, Monday the 10th, when you go to you're going to switch it to the 9th, not the 2nd.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes, that is correct. I have to look at my calendar all the time, so it is confusing. Charlie said he sets reminders each week. Great idea, very helpful.
And it's just 1 day prior, basically, if you do it on that Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yep. Now, something that we are working on from an IT standpoint is that for online, what we want it to do, and we'll get there eventually, is that it won't let you record on any day but that Sunday. So it'll only give you the Sunday option. So you won't be able to mess that up. But we're not quite there yet, but we'll get there. So until then, you just remember what date you're setting it for. What other attendance questions do we have? I literally couldn't make attendance more confusing if I tried. So I really appreciate you guys sticking in here and, working with the data.
I have another question.
Sure.
So when it is a holiday, let's just say, or even if everybody was present and we were doing it, there's that option that says everybody present, or like, if I click everybody present, do I then click save as well? Or by clicking everybody present, it also saved it?
You should probably click save too, just to be sure. It won't mess it up, but I'm pretty sure you have to click save as well. What it'll do is it'll highlight that day once it's been saved. It'll either black it out or gray it out. So when you go back in, you'll see that date has been gray or black, and that's when you know that attendance has been recorded.
Okay. So second question, only because I'd gotten an email because somehow I had screwed up the records. And I don't really have an answer. So I had actually recorded attendance and had done somebody wrong, right? And so I got one of those reports saying, right, confirmed, did this person really, were they absent? So I went back and I looked at my records thinking to myself, no, they were there, right? So I went back and I looked and, oh yeah, they were there. So I actually recorded them wrong. So I had gone in and just simply changed it, pulled it up, went to the day, changed it from absent to present, and then click save again. Well, then later on, I got the notice again, and I said, well, I fixed it. And so when they went in and looked at it, they said, well, there's two records here. Blossom, what did you do? I'm like, I don't know. So it's like, so then I just started asking people, and they said, well, when you make a change, you actually have to say, delete this day. And then I had to re-enter everybody in again. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was wondering if I don't think the system at this point is smart enough to not show that you had duplicated those records. So yeah, yes, unfortunately, I think that probably is correct.
Okay, so if I do make a mistake and I have to go back to correct, I have to actually delete it and then put everybody back in again.
Yeah, just delete that day. Just take a screenshot and then delete the day.
Okay, all right, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Good question. Okay, well, I am going to turn it over to Dr. Bryson to talk about discussion expectations.
Okay. I feel like as a mentor, this is where I find that most new and even continuing adjunct faculty members have the most issues with discussion participation. And it seems to be the area that, if you're crushed on time, and you will get the assignments graded, but the discussion board seems to be the area that maybe will be a little more lax. But it's really important to be active in the discussion area. This is where you really grow your sense of community within your online class, and your presence in the discussion is really important. If you were teaching a ground class, you wouldn't walk into the ground class and say, hi, everybody, how are you doing? Go ahead and discuss this and then walk out, right? You would be there to facilitate the discussion. Well, the same thing applies to an online class. You really need to be present and be in the discussion and be a part of what's happening during that discussion week. So our expectations, we like to have instructors be present in the discussion, if possible, 4 days a week. I know that's a huge expectation for people who are part-time, and you have full-time jobs and all these other things, but it's so important that we really stress that you really need to be in there, you need to be present, and it's just not enough to read the discussion. You actually have to respond and reply, and to ask probing questions and really make it known, leave a breadcrumb trail, as they say, to let students know that you were in there, that you saw that they were participating, that you responded to them. That's why we call it facilitating a discussion, that you're in there, that you're really responding to what students are saying and letting them know that you're hearing them and that you're there, and that you're present and you're participating. So that's really important, that you're in there, that there's a record of you being there. I've had a lot of faculty members in the past say, well, I'm responding to students via email, so that's my participation. No, that's not enough for a number of reasons. Other students need to see that you're participating and responding to all the other students. They won't know that if you're just doing individual emails to students. And when people like Alan are doing an evaluation, instructors are evaluated on a yearly basis. One of the main criteria that we're using to evaluate you yearly is your participation in the discussion. They don't have access to your emails. They are not going to know how much you're interacting with students via email. They can only see what you're doing in Blackboard. And so a big part of what they're evaluating, in addition to your grading and your announcements, is your participation in the discussion board. So that really needs to be active. You need to be active in that discussion board. You're communicating with learners, you're interacting, you're facilitating the discussion, you're asking probing questions, you're adding value. What I like to do on a weekly basis is to find articles and other videos or other information related to the topic that we're talking about that week, and adding it and asking students what they think about, oh, I found this article related to what we're talking about this week. What do you think of this? How does this relate to what we're discussing, in our weekly material? So that's one thing that you can do. We have a training course, if you haven't seen it yet, that's specifically talking about discussion and enhancing discussion in ways that instructors can really be active in the discussion board. So I highly recommend, if you haven't seen that training video yet, to go ahead and view it. It's extremely helpful. Are there other questions or comments that people have about the discussion and our discussion expectations? This is really where I see that instructors are maybe not meeting what we'd like to see instructors doing in our classes. Cindy, did you have a question?
I have a question. So I hold weekly office hours, and everybody joins and we talk on Blackboard, Collaborate. And I asked about discussions. I said, so when I add to the discussion and I ask questions and everything, I said, I've noticed that we have a good flow going. And as soon as I jump in, zip, discussion is done. And I said, tell me why that is. And they said, well, you're the subject matter expert. As soon as you talk and give an opinion, we all feel like end of story, we're done. And they said, as soon as you jump in, they said, we will not discuss any further because you put in your thoughts are right. Our thoughts might be a little different, and we're done talking. And I said, no, I want your discussion. And they're like, nope, that's just what happens. And I said, okay. I said, fair enough. So I tried it and I was watching, they're really discussing. As soon as I put something in, discussion went blank. It was like they all flatlined. And I thought, all right. So I'm real careful about putting in discussions because they said their thought process is we're discussing with our peers and getting each other's opinions. You're the expert. Once you put your opinion in, none of our opinions matter. So what do I do about that?
Well, Tom, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I've run into that too. And like you, I noticed it, and like you, I finally figured out what was going on. I'm the boss. If the boss is in the room, everybody defers to the boss. So what I've started doing is, in addition to those times when I offer my opinion or my view or whatever, just as many times I will find a good discussion between two or more students, and I will call them out by name and say, good discussion. This is what we're here for. So like in the subject line, I'll have the two or three students' names, and then all I put in the box is good talk, keep it up. Something like that. So they know that you see it, you've left your footprint, but you haven't disrupted the conversation.
So are you asking probing questions and asking students to tell you more? That's the approach that I normally take. Is I will ask a question. Oh, I love when you said this. Can you tell me more about it? What made you think that? I'm curious to know why you're considering this. You know, oh, I really like when you said this. Tell me more about that. Or can you share with the class more information about that?
Yeah, if I offer a view, if I comment, and usually the only time I comment is you post the initial discussion, student responds directly to the professor, I respond back, okay? But whenever I leave a comment, I do that. I end it with a question. And now after listening to Cindy, I'm thinking not only should I end it with a question, but I might want to say, this is just my opinion, keep talking, what do you think? So between the three of us, I think we're on to something here.
But I'm finding that even though I ask the question, they're not coming back to answer it. It's like, I can ask probing questions all I want, but they said, as soon as you join in, we're quiet, we're done, we move on.
The other thing you can do too, which I try and I've found it successful in the classes that I teach, of course, the classes I teach are not really information based, they're more discussion based anyway. So, I mean, I'm not sure what types of classes you're teaching, but I just make my own thread and I say, oh, I found this article and it's in my own thread. I found this article. I'm really curious to know what you think about this article. And so then they can comment in that thread about the article that I added, and it's not disruptive to the flow of their conversation.
That's a good idea. To start my own discussion inside of it rather than discuss on theirs.
Yeah.
Because I've tried to discuss on theirs and that's like a lead balloon.
The other thing you have to keep in, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Cindy.
No, that's fine.
The other thing to keep in mind is a lot of students will drop and disappear. And there's not a lot we can do about that. I mean, if you have students that are dropping and disappearing because, you know, they did their, 3 or 4 days and now they're gone for, the next 2 days and they're not coming back till Monday, there's nothing you can do about that. Don't worry about it. I mean, what can you do? You can't force them to come in every day or check every day. If they're meeting the requirements, the timing might just be off. If you're in there Saturday and you see something and you comment and they've already done their posts for the week and they're not coming back till Monday, well, oh well.
Well, and I'm also finding,
I'm sorry.
I also find that we have I'll have about a class of 25 and I'll have about 15 of them post by Wednesday. And then I have about a few that'll post on Thursday. And then they all come back by Saturday. And then you have that handful of maybe 5 or 6 that try to post their initial and their replies all on Sunday night. And I won't give them full credit. I'll say, wow, you did really good. I really like this. I really like that. In order to give you full credit, you need to post your initial post on Wednesday and follow-ups by Sunday night. And nobody has come back and balked at me about it. And I say it every single time. And I'm hoping, is there anything that we can do? Does anybody have
my experience is that some students don't care. They're willing to lose the 2 or 4 or however many points you're taking off because they're only going to post on Sunday. So there's nothing you can do about it. It may be, you have to think from the student's perspective and a student's point of view. These are all adult learners. They all have the majority of them have jobs and kids and families and are doing, juggling a million different things. So some of them, we have a lot of nurses and they work odd hours, like 4 days a week for 12 hours or whatever. And the only day they can post is, Saturday from 9 to 12. They literally have no other time and they're willing to take the points off because they're just not going to be able to be in there another time. And there's nothing you can do about that. Somebody else had another comment.
I was just going to say that I have the exact same situation as Cindy. And I kept saying, is it just me? I mean, in fact, Ultra is a little more challenging than our other system because I have less control. We have less control. I used to be able to create my own threads and just, put whatever I wanted in there. And I would make it exciting enough that people want to jump on it. But then with Ultra, I don't have that anymore. So I have to try to insert my part of it and hope that they will be interested in what I say. But most of the time, like you said, Cindy, they just pretty much ignore what I say. It's like, okay, wait till she gets out and then we'll talk again. So then I'll try to stay in there with them and see if they'll do it. And I have people actually calling me on the phone and they'll ask me questions. They don't want to ask them in the classroom. They'll ask me on the phone and we'll have a great conversation. And that's kind of how we do it. And then when I have a question about anything that they're doing, I'll pronto a message or something and they'll call me. And that's what we do. And so I've learned that certain people operate like that and not to take it personally because it's not. But I definitely had to relinquish a lot of control with this Ultra. And I finally have gotten used to that. So I try to monitor what people are saying. I try to jump in there sometimes, but I learn more about what they're doing. And they're very dynamic discussions. And I learn what they're saying, how they think. They love the independence of thought. They love to be able to express themselves fully without any kind of tempering instrument like me saying, wait a minute, let's talk about it. Let's dissect it. None of that. They just want to go with it. And so they learn a lot from each other. So sometimes I'll put something in there to spur them on. Just like, for example, I've learned with my students in org development that they are absolutely, fascinated with SWOT analysis and pestle analysis. Man, when they get that down and they can talk the talk, they tell that to everybody in their home country, I think. Too. They love it, love it, love it, love it. So we have a good time in those situations. So it depends on the topic, especially with something that they can really learn from it and shine as if it's a status item. They want me to participate just a little bit. But if not, they want me just to sit there and just look at things. And if there's a problem, I don't want to say it in the classroom to embarrass them, but I'll send them a little message and just make sure that they understand what they're saying is not quite right. But I'm thinking that I'm going to start saying in the classroom, you know what, let's discuss this. I think that we need to think about this in a different way and then just put it like that. And sometimes I've done that, but sometimes I haven't because I'm trying to assess the personalities and I don't want to shut down anybody. So it's a learning game for me, but I'm enjoying it, but I just don't feel like I have the control that I used to have in Blackboard.
Yeah, there's certain times when you should go in there and really correct things. Obviously, when students are being hostile to each other or being inappropriate, those things need to be.
No, they don't do that. No, they don't do that at all.
Yeah, it may happen. I mean, it's happened 16 years. It's happened to me just maybe 3 or 4 times. I mean,
okay.
So it happens occasionally.
Okay.
But there also may be times when students have an error of fact. And I will go in there and make a correction and say, oh, maybe you meant to say this, or, in a nice way. Mm-hmm. So the other students don't take the error of fact and say, well, she didn't correct that. Is that true? So you want to make sure that things that are being posted are factually appropriate and factually correct. But
I always make sure that they don't have a wrong impression about something that's been presented. So I do definitely do the cleanup work. But I'm saying that to encourage the independence of thought, sometimes they kind of go really strong with something, and then I'll, ease into it and, moderate it, and then it's okay, and then they go right back out. So it's just kind of a juggling act, and I'm still trying to figure out, what's best for everybody without tampering anybody's enthusiasm. So I think it's a great learning experience for sure. But it has really been different than the other Blackboard format. It has a lot of benefits, of course, but you definitely kind of lose the control of facilitating everything because they're not depending on your threads because they can post their own threads and everybody depends, everybody picks who they want to follow or respond to or whatever. And it's kind of different, that's all. But change is always exciting.
Yeah,
So
and you have to, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. You have to experiment and try things, and some things will work and some things won't. And sometimes things will work for a while and then they don't. And each class is different. Like like each class has a personality and a dynamic that changes. So yeah, it's a lot. Somebody put in here, I think it was Tom, that it's a balancing act. And I think you also mentioned that as well. It is, it's like, juggling in a way. So that's great.
I use it to establish relationship.
I'm sorry.
This is Dolores Jackson. I use it to establish relationship, and I keep a document, and then I do columns for every single week. And then by the student's name, I want to make sure that I discuss something with each student every single week. And I did that. I think it says that we're supposed to do 4 times a day, and one of the days is the weekend. The weekend one, usually, as someone has already mentioned, students they're already gone, they're done, and they don't often respond. But anyway, as far as establishing relationship, then I make sure that I have, and by relationship, I start off with commenting positively about what they're talking about, the things they're talking about, and so on and so forth. And then I take that from there with some of the prodding questions and so on. And so I've had good success with that. And in fact, it's very rare that students do not reply back to me when I do it in such a way that complements their work and their thoughts and so on and so forth. Usually I start with that, and then I take them into another, but what about this? Or have you looked at this? Or can you explain this? Or will you give me some feedback on that, or whatever? Anyway, so that's worked for me, but I have to keep track because of the number of students we have. I have to have some way where I can say, oh my gosh, if I don't, I can miss somebody. And so I want every single student to feel like they're a part of the entire class and that they have that same dynamic with me. So that's how I handle it.
That's really great. And it's been very wonderful too. I get these unexpected messages in my email from students, and they'll say, Dr. Fran, I'm really enjoying your class. And I'm always surprised at that because I don't expect it. But, they say that. And I was like, wow, why can't you say that in the class? But they reach out to me to tell me that. And so we have this wonderful dialogue. And I think that's great because I am building a relationship with those certain people, who do that. And so, I always remind myself of that. And say, you're touching somebody because they're understanding what you're trying to create, for them, that you're developing a wonderful learning journey for them, and they're enjoying the process and getting something out of it. They're better now than when they came in, they're more learned. And when people reach out and we actually have like conversations on the phone, we might stay on the phone for an hour. It's amazing. But they're asking for my feedback about how to, do a certain thing, or how do I feel about this? And so we'll just have these deep down conversations, and it's really wonderful. And every time I see a student turn around who's had a lot of problems, they turn around because I always give them affirming messages. I'm always very positive. I tell them, I'm your biggest supporter. I want you to succeed. Whatever I can do, let me know. I've been there in your shoes. I know how hard it can be. And and then once I say those things and I prove it to them, they tend to trust me more, and they'll reach out to me more. So this has been a different thing with the Ultra, because before I don't think I had much of that, but with this Ultra, they respond in a little different way. And then I notice when I'm with the MBA students that I have to understand the dynamic too. When I was, for example, on site at Brookfield last year, I had people from India, I had people from China, and I had to understand that a lot of people have matriculated through this program together, but that a lot of people don't get out of their comfort zone and they stay with the people that they're used to working with. And so I have to understand that it doesn't do any good for me to try to force, the integration between the two countries. And I thought that was so strange, but I understand that. And so I tried little ways to change it, but I'm not being very successful with that. So I'm just rolling with it right now. But it's a learning process. And I think that I learn something new every time I interact with the students. So it's good.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Johnson. That's wonderful.
Hey, everybody, this is Doreen. I just wanted to make a quick comment about the phone calls. I also have phone calls with students, but it's important to, whatever your phone call is about, whether it's about the course or they just want to talk to you, say that you're doing great or they're doing great. I always, right after the phone call, I write down a summary of the phone call and I send it to the student in course messages so that the phone call is reflected in that within the course. So if there's ever a question or anything later on, even if it's something good, but because when we're thinking about evaluations, like none of that stuff will show up. So you want to be able to support your work some kind of way. In course messages, you can do that or put it in Pronto or something so that there's a record of it.
That's great. Thanks for that tip, Doreen. That's wonderful.
Thanks.
Okay, Andrea, let's move on to the next topic since we're starting.
Lots of great discussion there. So maybe another opportunity to talk just about discussion. It's kind of what I'm hearing. So Tom's nodding his head. All right, well, I'm going to move on. We're going to talk about plagiarism, and I'm going to do another screen share because that's what I like to do. So this is the academic dishonesty reporting flow chart. We'll talk a little bit about this and what happens. So should you suspect that you have a student who plagiarized in your course, you use Safe Assign, which Karen will talk about, confirm that it was plagiarism. This is a handy dandy flow chart, which is also in the professional development section of the portal. This document is in there, so you guys can go in there and pull that up. But you suspect that there's academic dishonesty, so you would contact the academic dean, which is Dr. Haynes, but he has deferred that to me, so you can go ahead and contact me to talk about it. You can also contact your full-time faculty mentor, so Dr. Bryson, Dr. Moore, Dr. Weiss, and just really kind of talk through this process. So you have a student, they plagiarized, do I give them an F on the assignment? Do we remediate? What do I do? Really, that's up to you as the instructor with that academic freedom, but we're here to support you and talk through that, kind of work through that with you. So whatever you decide to do, you will collude with the academic dean, and there is a form that you will fill out, which I will show you guys as well. So you'll complete that form. So let's say you decide to, you've seen the student, you've given the student some feedback on previous assignments. They still plagiarized on another assignment. So you want to go ahead and give them an F for this assignment. So you'll fill out the form, you'll send that over to me. And what we do is we send that form that you complete to the registrar's office so that they have documentation of the academic misconduct for that student. And then I email that student and copy the student's academic advisor and the dean and let them know that an incident of plagiarism has been documented for them on file with the registrar's office. And I also let them know, the university doesn't tolerate this. I send them to the academic catalog where it talks about academic honesty and that it could result in failing the course or dismissal from the university. Can you guys see this document right here? Many of you guys have used this document, unfortunately, but this is the academic misconduct action form. It lists some of the incident. Most of the time it's plagiarism. So then you would click other and then write down what the action is that you took for the student. So whether that was an F, whether that was recommendations to fail the student from their course, if it's been, 3 or 4 incidents of plagiarism in your course and you're just kind of fed up, then we might have to move to some stricter policies or stricter actions with the student, which we have done. It's not my favorite thing. First, with academic plagiarism, as you guys know, it's not we're not trying to be punitive. We're not trying to have gotcha moments. Most of us are, all of us are teachers at heart. We want to teach the students, we want to lead them, we want to show them, what APA is, how to cite, how to reference other work. But sometimes there's just, blatant plagiarism where it's completely another student's work or, entire sections of websites that you're able to catch. And at that point, it does become a serious issue and we want to make sure that we remediate and address that with the student. So I'm going to stop there and see what questions you guys might have regarding plagiarism and how to handle that. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. Just work with me if you have questions, your faculty mentor, and we'll kind of walk you through that process, how to handle it. I do also, the other thing is, so if you do have an incident, you fill out the report, you send it to me. I do also ask that you also email the student outside of just giving a grade of an F and putting notes into the grading rubric saying, I saw plagiarism, here's an F. I also ask that you send that student an email. A lot of times students are not reading that feedback right away, if at all. So it's very important that you contact the student, letting them know what has happened, because when I email them from the dean's office, they would be like, whoa, what, I didn't know that. So I do ask that you make that first contact with the student, and it might even be a phone call. And I do encourage you to have that phone call with the student because that personalizes the incident a lot more. If Cindy calls me and she says, hey, let's talk through this. This is what I found. You know, it's going to scare me. I'm going to really, you know that Cindy's reading my work and I need to get my act together. So.
Did you hear my conversation yesterday then?
No, I didn't.
Because that was my conversation yesterday with a student.
I just know you won't let it fly and you'll give them a call. So
No. I don't let that stuff go.
Oh, I know. So that's great. I appreciate that you had that phone call. So Dr. Bryson, do you want to talk a little bit about Safe Assign? We have about 5 minutes left.
Yeah, I do want to leave time for question and answer in case you have any more general questions. And I know we don't want to stay here forever. So I just want to mention, since I've had some questions from some of the people who I mentor about Safe Assign, that you need to be really careful that you're just not looking at the number and it says 65% and you're like, oh, the thing's plagiarized. That's not the intent of the tool. And you really have to go into it and you have to look at each area in which the tool is picking up an instance of plagiarism, because there are many times where it just happens that, there's only so many resources. And if a student has a very specific paper that they're writing, they may have used the same resources and some of the same quotes that another student has used, and the paper isn't plagiarized. It just so happens that they use similar sources because the topic is so similar. So you really have to investigate and really look into it and figure out, is it plagiarized or is it just a coincidence that they're using similar sources or information from sources that are similar. So just don't go by the percentages. Really go into the, click on it, go into the paper, examine it, see what's happening. I mean, there are plenty of times when they're, handing in another student's paper as their own, and those are clear-cut instances of plagiarism. Self-plagiarism is a big thing, particularly for students that are taking classes that may be similar. There's a few classes in the psychology realm that are similar that they may be able to recycle a paper and hand it in again. Of course, we don't allow self-plagiarism. They can't hand in the same paper for multiple classes. You may run into an instance where a student has had to repeat the same class and they may be using papers, they can't hand in the same paper, but they may be using sources and maybe handing in something that's similar in content. So you really have to examine it because, it may be that they don't have a choice. For example, writing and critical thinking, they're writing essays about themselves. They're reflective essays about their personal experience. If they have to repeat that class, they're going to write about themselves again. It may not be the exact same paper, but it might be a 65%. And I have to look at it and say, okay, they handed in a new paper, but it's about themselves. So they're going to have some information in there that's similar to something they already handed in, because they're repeating the class. They didn't pass it the first time. So you really have to examine it and look at it and just don't go by the number. And we had questions about this or comments about Safe Assign.
Does it ever actually show us what the original source was?
Yes.
So I thought that it did, but I don't know. So in other words, I've clicked and it says that the original source was another student paper, but I don't know where to go from there to actually see the original source.
You have to dig into it like it's, and I think we should probably do a training on safe signs so we can delve into this deeper for people who need additional.
That would be great.
training. Yeah, because it's several layers down that you have to go into it to find that.
Okay, that would be great. I tried clicking different places on the screen, but
yeah, Andrea, make a note that we'll do a safe assign training.
Oh, we actually have. I just found it.
You found it. Okay, perfect.
There you go, Blossom. It's in the chat. April
okay.
Rhodes, who works on our curriculum design team, they did the safe assign training for us.
There you go.
Perfect.
You got it. You don't even have to wait.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrea. I totally forgot we did that.
Yeah.
Because I'm old and I forget things. Okay. Yes. And Kate had mentioned, and I run into this all the time as well. We have writing and critical thinking and global issues, and they dovetail on each other. And students do try to students in global issues try to recycle papers all the time. And that's a big no. No recycling papers. They must write fresh new papers for every class. It may be that they're using some similar content, but they can't be cutting and pasting stuff. So yeah, in those instances, you really have to look and see how they're using the material in both of the papers.
Are students able to see the report prior to submitting?
Sometimes. Actually, no. I want to say no. I thought that it's an option, but I don't think that we can do that in the current Blackboard system. I think the new Ultra allows it, but I don't think that they can. And that might be a question in that safe assign training that they answered, but I'm pretty sure that they can't.
Yeah, because I had someone that had a 65 and I looked at it and I contacted the student and talked to her, and I thought she was able to look at the report prior to setting it in, because some schools have it where they can review that safe assign report and then they can readily see where they need to. A lot of it is just because they don't know how to cite things.
Right.
And not necessarily because of plagiarism, but if they're not able to see it, then they really don't, we really have to contact them to help them out in that. But sometimes I think it's good for them to at least be able to see one draft and fix it and then submit, just to get the practice of learning how to cite.
That's a good point, Noreen. Encourage them to send it to NetTutor. NetTutor is a free resource that we use, and NetTutor does APA. So if they get it done early enough, they can send it to NetTutor, and NetTutor will give them that feedback. So it's not perfect, but it can help.
Okay.
Cindy, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. So our students have to turn everything in by Sunday night at midnight. And Dr. Bryson and I don't stay up till midnight. And I do my attendance at 6 a.m., 6:30 on Monday morning. I have been trying really hard to get all of my grading done for all of my students and all their assignments by Tuesday. Is that, I know, but I don't know what the expectation is.
Oh, that's a great question.
What is the expectation?
That's not the expectation. Don't drive yourself nuts. You can get the discussion board graded Monday or Tuesday. That's great.
Okay.
And then, I mean, we encourage you to do them as quickly as possible, so because students want feedback and they use it for the next assignment. But you have you have 1 week from the due date.
I didn't know what the expectation was, but like it's Wednesday and I'm like, oh my gosh, I better hurry up and get these done. If I'm not done by Wednesday at noon,
it's great that you're doing that, but yeah, don't drive yourself nuts to do that.
I mean, I want to make sure that I give them, because I give them like a lot of feedback, and every single document, I put a ton of feedback in the document and then a lot of feedback in the comments. But I want to make sure that I give it in a timely fashion so that they don't make the same mistake next week that they made this week.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Don't kill yourself to get it done in one day. No, that's ridiculous.
But yeah, I try to get it done definitely by Wednesday at the latest. And if I don't get it by Wednesday, I'm a little anxious.
Cindy,
especially trying to get discussions in and open office hours and everything else. So cool. Thank you.
After, when I send out the recording for this, I will also attach the standards policy, which I think it's kind of hidden, but it's our standards for online instructors, and it talks about those types of things. So that'll be helpful. So you're not, if you do have a question about a policy, that'll be kind of a great place to start. So I think that was included in there. So good question. I'll make sure everybody has a copy of that so they're not busting their buns to get grades.
Yeah, you don't want to be like Lucy and Ethel on the conveyor belt and chocolates just keep coming and coming and you can't. You can
But as
space
long
it
as
out.
you keep eating them, we're okay, Dr. Bryson.
Doreen, did you have a question or comment? Thought I saw your mic go off and on.
Oh, no, I just said she was my hero trying to get all that done on Monday.
I know. That is amazing, but don't kill yourself trying to do that.
Well, we're past 7, so I don't want to keep anybody. Don't feel rude to jump off if you do. If you have other questions, I can stay on here for another few minutes. So feel free to ask any burning questions since we didn't have time for that.
I guess we can go back to the discussions. The question I have is, can the response from a student, if substantive, to the instructor be part of their discussion for the week?
Yes.
I think that's what I have done. So I had to get that out first to make sure you said it was okay. So I've been doing that because I found that I have to let them know that, otherwise they won't respond.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're like, well, that's another discussion I have to do and I don't have time. So if you just let them know that this is also part of your participation for your discussion grade, then I think they're more apt to respond to you as well. So I haven't had problems with after I stated that.
Yep, that's good. Good point, good.
Any other questions or comments? I wanted to point out that we have Dr. Trish Hernandez here, which is awesome. If you want to introduce yourself, Dr. Hernandez, and just say a word or two.
Right.
Hello.
I know, I didn't mean to catch you while you were taking a bite.
I'm having my afternoon snack, no problem. So I'm Dr. Trish Hernandez. I'm responsible for our Bachelor of Science in Addiction Counseling and our Master of Science in Addiction Counseling, as well as our Master of Arts in Counseling programs. I'm also very familiar and versed in psychology and human social services. And I've been here almost as long as Dr. Karen Bryson.
Mm-hmm.
So,
6 months. There was a 6-month difference between when we started.
right?
Yeah.
Night and day.
Yeah, I was only at Ottawa 6 months when you started.
Oh. Okay. Well, see, you're still 6 months older than me.
I know, I'll always be.
Yeah. So, yeah, thank you for having me say hello.
Well, we're glad to have you here today.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining and bringing your questions and discussion. I will send out a recording probably next week along with the standards document. I do want to remind you guys, go to that faculty professional development area in the portal. There's lots of good resources, lots of good training, other trainings that we've had, but we're all here if you have questions. Your faculty mentor, I am, anybody at Ottawa. So give us a call, send us an email. So have a nice Thursday.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, so I have a question here from Michael. Michael, are you there?